Over the past 5 years, Sky Sports Racing has worked hard to shine a light on diversity and inclusion within the sport of horse racing. Our groundbreaking Leading the Way series shared the powerful stories of those at the forefront of our sport.
You know, that was a reward for hard work and dedication over the years.
I'd definitely like to put something back into racing, what I've got out of it.
Horses attract the kids, they fix it, they ride, their life changes, improves, gets better, and now we're just paying it forward.
The 20 Bourbonic, ridden by Kendrick Carmouche, the first black jockey in the Kentucky Derby since 2013.
It was quite shocking to see the opinions of certain people you thought you knew.
How many people in racing have put up their hand to say either I'm supporting Black Lives Matter or taken a knee or whatever? There's been no gesture whatsoever from anybody in the sport.
Alongside these features, programmes such as the Uncomfortable Race and the Inclusive Race have sparked vital conversations and have started the process of meaningful change across our sport.
As a black person, if I see a man with a knee on his neck who cannot breathe, who's being filmed and killed in front of people, and racing can just ignore that, that's disgusting. That is taking us so far back.
Now that journey continues at Ascot as Rishi Persad and Brian Finch reflect on the progress made on our diversity and inclusion front. Brian, it's been 3 years since we did the Inclusive Race and you arrived fresh-faced.
Still fresh-faced.
Oh no. Fresh-faced at Epsom Downs as chairman. You'd been on the committee before then. It's Black History Month. What progress have you seen over this last 3 years, probably from an administrative side?
It's 3 years already, Josh. Time goes quickly. If I've learnt anything in the 3 years, it's that you really have to start something, change it and tweak it, and you'll have some progress. 3 years later, have we made the kind of progress I thought we'd make? Well, I've seen some signs, but not as substantive as I'd hoped. And I think even from my own part at Epsom, we've really struggled to get momentum. There's been some other organizational changes that have maybe impacted that. But yeah, it's taken time. So I'd almost give myself a C for progress in that sense. I've always believed that if you're going to make any sort of changes of the nature of diversity and inclusion, it has to be led from the top. And the organization I'm part of, the Jockey Club, is very much an executive organization. So just getting to get like-minded people together to want to do something and then commit to doing something has been a bit more challenging, maybe. Perhaps it's my anxiety that I just kind of want things to go a little quicker. So there's definitely room for momentum, I think.
Okay, well, we talk about momentum. 5 years on, Mr. Rishi Persad, you and I...
You look younger.
Thank you.
I've got grey hair.
I've definitely got
5 years on, we were stood here at Ascot Racecourse on a dark, gloomy day, but we had an enlightening conversation, much of which we didn't quite realise the either ramifications or the ripple effect of what that conversation would have and did. How are you feeling now?
Good question. Obviously, when you asked me to do that interview and I agreed to do it, it was all born out of good intentions, trying to help. The response to doing that interview was extraordinary because it felt like people thought I was threatening or not trying to help, doing the opposite to what I was trying to do. I didn't understand where that came from. It's revealing.
Do you understand now where it came from?
I have a better understanding. I don't think I have a complete understanding because I'm not in their shoes, the people who criticised what we said. But I have a better understanding of where they're coming from. And I feel doing it again now, you know, at the back of my mind going, oh, I wonder what's going to happen after this. But I hope that this might be an example of us moving on from 5 years ago, that being able to do this interview in a different climate might actually show that there has been a little bit of progress. Yeah. And that I feel comfortable in doing that, despite the reaction that it evoked 5 years ago.
Did you think twice about accepting our invitation to speak today?
I thought twice, but I didn't have to think that hard about it. Like I say, I genuinely believe that there has been some progress. To quantify that is something I'm sure we will do in our discussion. But I feel that the fact that there has been some progress makes me a little bit more comfortable sitting here with both of you to talk about it again.
And you work across a broad spectrum of broadcast, from Olympic Games to the Masters to Wimbledon. Have you seen more change within those sports industries compared to horse racing over this last 5 years?
I've seen more change in a few other sports that I work in. A significant effort to change the diversity of it, whether it be gender or ethnicity. I haven't seen as much in racing, but I have seen some progress. I think what happens in some of the other sports is a reflection of what's happening in society. Although I have to say the last few months in society have been more concerning than I can remember in a long time. But it has reflected a progress generally in society over the last 5-10 years. I think other industries have moved with society a little bit easier, a little bit more in tandem and in step with society than perhaps racing has.
And Brian, what do you see as the challenges then that racing has as a traditional sport, as it moves forward to modernise, diversify, and look at expanding its customer base and fan base?
So how did we all get involved in racing, Josh? I was watching the old videos, and I think it was parents, grandparents, somebody who grabbed you by the hand and took you to the races. And whether you started by having somebody said, "What horse do you like?" and then have a bet for you, or whether you just stood up and watched these wonderful animals against the fence and got excited by them. But it took time to educate you that way. How do we get involved with other sports? I played cricket at primary school. I swam, played football. The school helps you and the school teaches you those things, which of course we don't have with horse racing. So somehow the sport's going to have to find a way to develop a means of bringing young people into the sport, and I'm talking all young people, all races, all nationalities, all genders, to come and enjoy it and get a fast-track introduction to racing. We bring a lot of people and we host them at the various race courses, and I've done that as well. And you can't help but be amazed at how their eyes light up and really realize, wow, this is just an amazing sport. A little fearful when you take them to the parade ring and they come up close and realize it's half a ton of animal that's out there. And so it excites those individuals. But how to do that on a concerted basis so that they can become people that are A, knowledgeable of it, awareness, and then B, want to be involved in it in some way, trial, and then B, think this is for me, a loyal user, and so you go. It's sort of disciplines you do in your life with any other activity. I think we've got to find a way in racing to do that.
And as much as we've borne of frustration that progress has been slower in our sport, if there is some progress going forward, is it a long race? Are we just expecting this too quickly, or is there anything that we can do immediately to shoot that progress up forward?
So I think it's just a good question. Yes, it is a long race, and I'm hoping long is not 350 years because that's the beginning of our sport. Let's try and make it a bit shorter than that. But there are some good signs, Josh. Again, I'll talk just about the Jockey Club, but I'm quite excited about the recent program that they've introduced, the Patron Scholarship, which the Jockey Club have done. So 2 individuals sourced from organizations like the Ebony Horse Club to get formally trained at the National Stud, at the British Racing School. So using the capabilities that already exist in racing and getting these individuals to come through to get 2 years of, well, I think it's an annual scholarship for 3 years, to get a year to actually experience racing, and more importantly, I hope, to actually find their path within the sport. And if we've got 1, then 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, and there's an opportunity there. I've always felt, and this is a question for all of the leadership, I think, in the various entities that make up the sport, is there's racing, which is quite a complex sport, but there's finance, and there's HR, and there's operations. These are normal skills that are available widely in our community. And my question to the leaders is, So why aren't we going out and looking and recruiting those kind of individuals and bringing them in? Those people that will then, once they become part and parcel of it, will bring their families and create some sort of movement. Because if you're working in an organization, look at how beautiful we are here, you will bring your family, and all of a sudden you expose them to different parts of racing, and there's a real chance they become fans of the future.
And Rish, what Brian's talking about there is it becomes an option. And we've talked about this before. How do we become more of an option, be it in school? It's not a participant sport within school. You can't go and become Frankie Dettori after watching the Derby. You know, we've got to get people to come racing to experience it, but also there's the digital element as well. So I'm sure there are a good few options. You've just taken your daughter to the 100 for her first time at this amazing experience. How do we bring that into horse racing?
That's a really good question, because you think about where we compare ourselves to other sports. You know, we've already in this conversation said, what about other sports and how do they progress, etc. Other sports are making significant strides. I suppose they don't have to have the challenge of dealing with live animals, most other sports, and so they can be a bit more expansive in their use. So I mentioned the 100 that I went to with my daughter, and it was specifically catered for getting kids excited on the day, whether it be the use of the music that they had, the concert in between the two finals, you know, fireworks, flames, etc. It was visually really exciting to kids. They did a lot of work with focus groups in preparing a day out at the 100 for kids. They asked families, what would you like? They asked the kids, what would they like to see? What would they want from an experience, get closer to the players, all that sort of stuff. And then they try and provide it for it. I would like to see us do something very similar. You know, we've got to get as many views from youngsters coming to the day out. You know, again, we all have kids who've been racing, and my daughter's always said she wants to get close to the jockey. She wants to meet Holly Doyle because she's got someone who she can look up to, you know. And going back to a diversity thing, you mentioned about Frankie Dettori. Yeah, people might see Frankie Dettori and think, well, how can I get there? But they have to want to be Frankie Dettori. You have to put them in the position to see Frankie Dettori or whoever it is now and want to be that person. And part of that is getting them through the turnstiles for whatever reason. And that's something that we need to do more of, to get those young people through the door so they come in and they see visually and then want to emulate.
One of the things I believe we have made progress in is the marketing of our sport in terms of what it visually looks like in advertisements, be that digital, be it on 48 sheet advertising, that we are showing a far more diverse and inclusive side to the sport. And do you think, as a businessman, Brian, and an ex-chief executive, do you think that has significantly helped?
Yes, there's a lot of progress there. Where do you draw your first impressions from? You know, to find out an event's happening, you look at whatever the ad is, whether it's a static ad or a video, or whether you've accessed it online through YouTube or whatever. You're looking at what's there, and being able to represent the communities that go to that place, I think is fundamentally important. And I think racing's done a reasonable job of starting to reflect society a lot more. And let's compliment Ascot. I think Ascot have done a fabulous job with what they do. It's quite interesting when you talk to friends and people who always ask me, how's it going? How are you enjoying it? Is it great? And when I ask the reverse question of, have you been? They go, no, but I would like to. Okay. And I'd like to go to Ascot. So clearly there's something that Ascot have done, and how it fits in the whole social calendar in the summer, I think has been a real credit to the organization. But there's still a blockage, and I think that blockage is partly driven by, but I'm not quite sure if I will fit in there. But if I come with you, or I come with a bunch of friends, can you show us where to go and how to do this? So there's that bit which can really just get people through the door, so to speak, Josh, I think, which is going to be key.
Brian's point about Ascot is one worth making, because Ascot have succeeded very, very significantly in promoting the Royal Meeting and others as well to a very, very high level, of publicity.
Yeah.
The Royal Meeting now gets enormous traction on social media, enormous. And that's something that ought to be shared around. All race courses should be having a conversation with Ascot. All organisations should be saying, right, let's talk about the success. it will only benefit the industry if we all did that. And similarly, we should also be having conversations with people involved in other sports. How are you doing it? Well, you know, they are willing to talk to us. On the Racing Foundation, we have an annual conference, as I'm sure you both know, and a couple of years ago, we did actually have someone from the 100 come in, and he gave a talk about how the 100 came into being, how they did their market research, how they spoke to focus groups, and how they did extensive amount of focus groups. He was absolutely sensational. I sat there in awe listening to what he said about how they developed all their marketing strategies and how they provided what they wanted to provide for the families, for the children, how to entertain them. But I would have thought that when he sat down for lunch, that his table would have been the busiest one there. When he sat down for lunch, I hope I'm not putting anyone in the... But he sat down there and nobody else was sitting. I ended up going to sit to him, talk to him about it, and there were very few other people on the table picking his brains about what he just said. And what he just said gave a really clear insight into a simple process, a very simple process or procedure to go, we want these people to come along. Let's ask them what they want and let's give it to them and let's see if that works. And guess what? It has worked.
Is that though, Rish? Because it's no one's job. Some people say it's everybody's job, but if it's everybody's job, it's no one's job.
It's a very, very difficult one to answer. I don't think I can give you the correct answer. I don't know if there is a correct answer, but what I would have done would be, if I was there representing any organisation in racing, I would have made contact with him. I would have asked him for some advice. I would have gone a little bit deeper on what he said, because he laid out something that looked to be a really good template for what we're trying to do in racing. I don't know at all now. So that was, what, 3 years ago, I think, that conference. And I don't know if there's been any follow-up on that from anyone who went to it. But there it was, laid out for you at the Racing Foundation conference. Racing Foundation put the day on, brought him in, and no one took up the responsibility.
This is also cricket that have made the investment into it. So it's not tokenism, it's not we've put a committee together and we're going to discuss it. They've invested in it and put a strategy together, Brian, which is where I'm yet to see in 10 years, we're talking 5 years now since Rishi and I had the conversation, 3 years since you arrived, I'm yet to see our sport have a strategy around how do we increase our customer base by looking at new communities and fan bases that can come into our sport.
Yeah, in the old industry that I worked in, we always talked about contestable space, i.e. what was out there, so you knew what you had and how you had to keep your customers happy and you grow your market share, but you had to understand the size of the prize, i.e. what else was out there. So some of your competitors had that, but also it was new customers that hadn't engaged with your product. And I've often wondered whether racing talks about its contestable space or understands its contestable space, i.e. what is actually out there. So we talk about a microcosm of that because it is about ethnicities who are not engaging with the sport, but they're part of that. There's other communities as well that need to be addressed. I think you raise a good question around, so whose job is it? And I wonder almost, if you're sitting there as a participant, you'd sit back and think, well, is that the BHA that's got to lead that as the leaders of our sport? Or is that the race courses that got to lead that? Because ultimately that's where most of the engagement is being transacted. Or is it somewhere else? And this lack of clarity as to who will take charge and drive any of these initiatives, I think is a key challenge. If I think back to cricket, yes, you'd have the counties, which maybe are the race courses, but the ECB are strong, and they decided they needed to do something, and then they led it and made sure that all their participants had to get behind it, and that's how you've probably seen the birth of something like the 100.
Is that racing's failure?
Perhaps that's what we're lacking, is my question, Rishi. And I'm thinking aloud here, but I don't know. Perhaps that's our not just our failure, but that's our opportunity.
Well, I decided to take that, and I went and spoke to Brant and Shay. Brant, thanks very much for agreeing to speak to us today.
Thanks, Sean.
It's been a long old time since the Diversity in Racing Steering Group started. That was back in 2017. It's been a journey. What's the BHA's response to seeing how that journey has gone?
Look, I think we have to reflect on, at that time in 2017, as a sport, it was a new place for racing to embark on the establishment of the Diversity in Racing Steering Group. We're now better informed, we understand more about this space. We've delivered what I think are really important achievements during that time. We appointed our first head of diversity and inclusion. We did launch the industry commitment to D&I. You know, there have been series of processes embedded into our own practices within the organisation here in the BHA that I think have achieved improvements. It's an evolution, I think, is probably the best way to describe it, Josh.
There's been commitment across the board. Back in 2021, Anna Marie Phelps and the team there, and the Diversity in Racing Steering Group launched the commitment, as you alluded to. How do you feel that has gone, and how can we judge how that's gone on?
Measuring how we've gone has been a challenge. There are barriers in terms of gathering the data. You know, it's a simple issue of trust and engagement. People are reluctant to engage and tell us about their lived experiences, to tell us how we could improve. And that lack of engagement does make it hard for us to gather the data and insights that help us develop an action plan. And so back around 2 years ago, when we went through our previous governance reform, we did develop a strategy and change team, and they're currently working with the Horse Racing Industry People Board to help better develop the data that we need to inform decision making and, importantly, measure the impact of our initiatives.
So if it puts diversity and inclusion as a priority, where does that priority sit?
Our board is clear that they are accountable for diversity and inclusion. We will be a better organisation. We are a better sport for broader diversity. We absolutely value the importance of that, and as a core enabler of our industry strategy, it's central to what we need to do to achieve taking our sport in a positive way.
So looking forward, what are the tangible targets that we can look at where we know as an industry that we are progressing in this area?
Yeah, I think the immediate things that we are focused on is developing a new broader D&I strategy. So that's already been in draft form to the IPG. We want to develop an action group that can enable us to develop that action plan around ethnically diverse communities. You know, can we provide a toolkit for employers in the sport to help them understand how we can better support diversity? The development of a leadership program which is an investment in the future of our sport in terms of bringing in people from ethnically diverse backgrounds. And then, of course, just very simple, tangible things like we will be changing the way we can allow people to report their concerns. There is zero tolerance in respect to discrimination, racial discrimination, and we want to make sure that people feel safe to be able to report that to us in a way that they're comfortable with, that enables them to understand what action's been taken. I think we just need to continue to work and be committed to making sure that decision makers in the sport, people that can actually get stuff done, are embedded and engaged in delivering the actions.
So we heard from Brant there that it is the BHA's job to both rule and govern the sport and lead the sport in a way, especially on a diversity and inclusion front. Do you believe that they are actually doing that, Brian?
It feels like a conversation we've had before. It feels like we're repeating the same processes. We need to get the data, we need to analyze the data, we need to set a strategy, and so it goes on. But we were talking about this, I think the sport's been talking about it for a while, certainly in my time. It feels like that, so yeah, more of the same, I guess.
So 2017, Nick Russ chaired the first Diversity in Racing Steering Group. Josh and I part of that, along with a few other familiar names who are no longer part of that committee. And we all laid out what we felt was an achievable ambition we all came with a different idea, by the way. We all sat down and said, what do you see the early stages of what the Diversity in Racing Steering Group was going to do? We all made suggestions. That was 2017. Listening to what Brant has had to say, and also, there was a recent strategy document produced by the Diversity in Racing Steering Group, or the current guise of it now, which is almost identical to what it was in 2017. 2017 we were on the starting line. There have been a number of false starts since then, and it feels like, as Brian has already alluded to, we're still on the starting line in many respects. There are some respects in which we have made a start and we have made a little bit of progress, but the overall picture that the BHA and Brad Dunshea has clarified that they are responsible for hasn't really gone anywhere. The fact that we're still 8 years down the line, still waiting for data, still waiting for a clearer picture of what racing's diversity picture is now. I mean, what does that say about what the last 8 years have meant for those of us who have had an interest in it? It doesn't look great, does it?
We were all invited to take part in, it was heralded and launched by the BHA, a survey to members of racing's family from the ethnic minority side. That was in March 2024. We're now in October 2025, none of which this research has been seen, be it publicly or privately. So how can we judge and devise a strategy when we don't even see what the data is telling us?
Yeah, that's a mistake, Josh. And we've heard that from others that contributed to that research. It's like, I think even at the outset, everybody said, please just tell us what you found out when you've collated all of this together. And the fact that it hasn't happened is indicative of maybe it's either really bad or people just, didn't do it properly or something. I don't know, but that's not good.
Even if it is perceived by those that have done it as bad, once you admit where you are, you can move forward. Yeah. If you continue to cover up or be an ostrich and stick your head in the sand, you're not going to move forward. But no one will criticise you, Rish, for wanting to be better and to better yourself, no matter who you are.
Absolutely right. If you are honest about where you're at, it gives you a much clearer mind to move forward. It's in anything that we do, any walk of life, any pursuit, if you are honest about where you are, then you're going to make more progress than pretense. The other point I'd like to make about that is that when you look at the people who have contributed to that, if it's bad, if the result of it is bad, the solidarity in knowing that I wasn't on my own experiencing the negative things. And if it's positive, then there's also an upside to it going, well, at least I have the assurance that what happened to me didn't happen to other people. So it's really important that it is made public and it is known to other people.
There has, my friends, been some fantastic celebratory green shoots achievements across both the last 5 years since we talked, both in the last 3 years since we got together at Epsom Downs. And I'm talking the likes of Ashley Wishart, who took the knee, which was the only person who you were actually asking for, that no one in horse racing, whilst other sports throughout Black Lives Matter were taking the knee and showing solidarity. Ashley took the bull by the horns and in the Magnolia Cup did that. We've seen Khadija Mellor, who's gone on from Magnolia Cup victory to now get an amateur licence. We've got Kaya Fraser coming through, Tyrese Campbell, and over in America, Kendrick Carmouche has just ridden his 4,000th win in the most successful black jockey in history. So there are green shoots and elements that we can hopefully take strength from, Brian.
Yeah, very much so, Josh. It's quite funny with our sport. It takes somebody who's going to have the gumption to go ahead and do something. It does make you wonder that if we could take these green shoots and these great examples and actually do it centrally in a big way, how much faster we could get traction across the sport. And that would be my wish, to build on some of these great initiatives to be able to do that.
There's a deal of learning, I think, that we can utilise from the experiences of the last 5 years. So after we did our programme 5 years ago, I was invited to make a representation to the BHA board. So I explained what had happened after the interview we did, and they all agreed that they wanted to sign an agreement and a will to address discrimination, to address the issue of the lack of diversity in the sport, and to do all the research, etc. Everybody on that BHA board all said, yes, I'm behind it, or supportive. Everyone was very supportive. Move obviously 5 years later, and yes, I'm sure that support is still there, but there is no know-how to go about executing that. So ultimately, I see what you've done, what the Riding a Dream Academy have done, individuals getting up and making things happen. The phrase, we should use the phrase because that's what it is, you lead the horse to water here. And that's what's happened with both the Racing Media Academy and the Riding a Dream Academy. You've led the horses to water. So I think that perhaps the sport ought to identify the individuals who can make this happen and ask them to run the programs in those respects that we need help on. And I say that under the context of the fact that I can understand why the sport is where it's at with regards to certain aspects of, whether it's diversity or, whatever the issue is in racing, because there are so many issues in the sport. And sometimes I feel bad saying what we're saying about, diversity, because I know that they're falling over themselves about fixture lists, about tax, about affordability checks, about prize money. There are so many issues that all that we have spoken about sits within that context of that I understand why there are times when diversity in racing is not a major issue, why they've got other priorities that they've got to focus on. Well, okay, let's box clever then. Let's go, okay, right. So we know that all of this is going to keep coming out. We've got all these issues keep coming up over and over and over and again. So why don't we go, right, let's identify Josh Apiafi and say to him, right, we'll remunerate you, Josh. And we're going to put you in charge of doing this. It doesn't have to be you, but it has to be someone with some of the credentials and some of the characteristics that you have to do those things, because it won't get done otherwise. We've got evidence of the last 8 years that says that. That's fact. That's our data, looking at it from the outside. It won't get done.
So Brian, let me ask you, what would you like to see put in place over the next 12 months that would have a huge benefit over a 2 to 3 year period?
I'd like to see ownership within the BHA. There's a new chair, Brandt's interim chair, whoever takes that position, but really owning it. And not just enabling another advisory group, committee, a bureaucracy to try and administer this, but actually setting a few real specific targets for 3 years. We will have 50%, 40%, 30% females in our executive teams, because you can do that. It's very, very, very easy to do. We will have 10%, 15%, whatever the number is, minorities in our executive teams. That's all within the capability of the BHA. And by doing that, they demonstrate that if we can, then every individual leadership group in racing could do exactly the same. That will be really, really tangible and quickly in 2 to 3 years, by the way, Josh. And trust me, the talent that they would bring into those positions would help them develop the programs to find new capabilities, the new audiences that they want to talk to, because they are their audiences, they are their communities, and they will help with that. And the business case will almost prove itself.
It's really important. You all know as well as I do that when this is finished and this is aired to people, that there will be cynics going, oh, not Josh, Brian and Rishi again talking about this. Why are we talking about this again? We did it 5 years ago, we're doing it again. What do we have to hear this for? Well, we're having to hear this because we are actually trying to do something positive, because there is potentially more benefit to the sport if we spread our wings a little bit wider, okay? So just those people who want to shoot people down without really thinking clearly through what we're about to say. Brian touches on it here. He said audiences, talent, people working within the sport. We can't just go, okay, let's not bother trying. There was someone, when I did what I did 5 years ago, there was someone who I worked with for years, a colleague of mine in the media, who actually reached out and said, what is the point? Because he doesn't think that people from a diverse background want to be involved. And I said, well, how do you know? Okay, it's all right to sit back and go, what do you think? Or I don't think so. Well, the reason why we're having this discussion now still is because we actually think we would like to find out for certain. We would like to know for certain, because we believe that there might be, not saying definitely, there might be more audiences, more talent coming into the sport, a broader pool in which to access people to be involved in the sport. That's it. There's nothing bad about it. So don't be threatened by what we're saying. We're trying to help.
It's because we love the sport. And I feel I've been so well received, and I know you have, wherever I've gone, and doors opened, partly driven by my role, but partly because I love engaging with people. And you sit back and say, this is just a magical world. And I need others to be able to enjoy it. I need it for me, not for anybody else. I need it for me. I want others to enjoy it, to appreciate it, to embrace it, because it's been so good to me. And that probably is the biggest driver. It makes me feel good, and I want others to feel good as well.
I can only thank you both for your time yet again.
Well, thank you, Josh.